Russia's advance near Novosilka in the Donetsk region continues without slowing down. Russian special forces are now conducting swift and unexpected raids across the Ukrainian front lines. As Moscow increases both its troop presence and the intensity of its attacks, the battlefield is growing more dangerous by the day. But behind the smoke and chaos, a complex struggle is unfolding, one that goes far beyond numbers and firepower. Now, let's take a closer look at the war, directly from the front lines. April 15th, 2025. The Russian army launched an attack on the Ukrainian defense line from two different places. The Russian army, which arrived in convoys, was met with a sudden and shock attack. The Ukrainian army was waiting with artillery units targeting the transit routes. The first tank in the convoy hits an anti-tank mine, and the first casualty occurs. The T-70 Russian tank, which has lost all its mobility, is burning with its ammunition. Another Russian tank right next to it takes a different route and moves away from there to avoid hitting the mine. Now the artillery attacks begin. While the Russian forces were on the move, the Ukrainian artillery units went into action. They were met with a very intense artillery fire. This attack covered the whole area with smoke and dust clouds. All the Russian armored vehicles were targeted one by one. In the meantime, you can like and comment to support us on our content. We need your support to continue creating our videos. Ukrainian forces were determined not to leave any armored vehicles behind in the convoy. Many armored vehicles were destroyed one after another, while Russian infantrymen who tried to hide and flee were caught by FPV drones. On a different front of the offensive, another Russian convoy advancing toward the region encountered a similar outcome. This group too was met with devastating artillery barrages and precise drone strikes. One after another, the armored vehicles were destroyed in fiery explosions, forcing the surviving troops to abandon them and disperse on foot. But Ukrainian surveillance systems were monitoring every movement live. FPV drone operators swiftly locked onto the retreating soldiers and took them out with pinpoint accuracy. April 17th, 2025. The 3rd Assault Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine destroyed the building housing Russian soldiers in the Kursk region with an M1 Abrams tank. The Ukrainian Azov unit opened fire on buildings where Russian soldiers were located with an MTLB vehicle in the same region. The caliber of the bullet used was so large that no building here could withstand it. According to reports, 8 Russian soldiers lost their lives in this attack. The Ukrainian intelligence is constantly monitoring the fact that Russian soldiers have turned many abandoned villages into military shelters. Such settlements are subject to sudden and rapid raids and are immediately returned, because the Russian counterattack is very fast. April 14th, 2025, the Skala Air Reconnaissance Group, part of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, detected a Russian armored vehicle and destroyed it with a direct hit of artillery fire. After the attack, the soldiers inside the vehicle did not have the opportunity to get out. Most likely, 4 Russian soldiers were neutralized. April 18th, 2025, the Ukrainian Mechanized Assault Brigade, upon receiving intelligence, laid a mine on a transit route near the Kursk region. The plan went as planned. The Russian rocket launcher was destroyed as a result of the raid. In this war, the superiority of the number of military personnel is not very important. Strategy, correct decisions, and technology determine the fate of the war. April 2nd, 2025. The 58th Mechanized Infantry Battalion of Ukraine, Luhansk region, detected a group of Russian soldiers nearby. It followed the Russian soldiers closely for a while and determined their shelter. It was understood where they were gathered and immediately took action against the Russian soldiers. An explosive-laden drone attacked the garage where the Russian soldiers were located. This Russian vehicle, detected by drones, digs a trench for Russian soldiers. Soon, drones belonging to the Ukrainian Azov forces launch an attack. The vehicle is attacked many times. It is completely destroyed in the first attack. Again, attacks are carried out on different vehicles, digging trenches in the same place. The truth about how these trenches are dug is also revealed. In fact, the soldiers make smaller trenches themselves with shovels, but in trenches this long, diggers are used. April 13th, 2025, the Skala Air Reconnaissance Group, part of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, launched a massive artillery strike on a Russian trench in the Kursk region. The explosion was so massive that it reportedly killed 16 Russian soldiers in the trench. The Russian trench, built in the woods, was often protected from drone attacks or went unnoticed. However, the high power of this artillery shell greatly reduces the likelihood of Russian soldiers surviving. This strike marked a significant tactical victory for Ukrainian forces, as the targeted trench had previously served as a key observation and staging point for Russian units in the area. Intelligence gathered from prior drone surveillance missions enabled a pinpoint strike, eliminating the threat with minimal Ukrainian involvement on the ground. After the hit, aerial reconnaissance confirmed the complete destruction of the defensive structure, with thermal imaging showing no signs of movement. This success, once again, underscored the growing precision and effectiveness of Ukraine's integrated drone artillery coordination, setting a precedent for future operations in similarly fortified regions. April 14th, 2025. In the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces carried out a coordinated drone-guided artillery strike against entrenched Russian positions near the village of Robotyne. The operation, executed in the early hours of the morning, resulted in the destruction of a fortified enemy outpost and the reported elimination of at least 12 Russian soldiers. The Russian positions, which had been camouflaged within a tree line and reinforced with sandbags and concrete, were believed to be used as a forward operating base for launching small-scale offensives. Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance units, after days of persistent surveillance, identified the exact coordinates of the location. Once confirmed, the artillery units were brought into position, and a series of high explosive rounds were launched with devastating accuracy. The success of the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade once again highlighted the effectiveness of Ukraine's modern combined arms tactics, especially in the use of real-time drone intelligence to enhance the lethality of ground-based firepower. This strike not only neutralized a tactical threat, but also disrupted enemy logistics in the southern front, contributing to Ukraine's continued efforts to reclaim occupied territory.